Welcome to the Flourish with Functional Nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Lowry, founder of Twin Cities Nutritional Therapy and a nutritional therapy and MAP Method Practitioner specializing in allergies and sensitivities, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, sleep issues, infertility, and other chronic health conditions. Join me for episode 43, where we talk with Dana Da Ponte, a professional intuitive, artist, and a MAP Method practitioner from Calgary, Canada. We talk about her journey, her work with empaths, highly sensitive people, and intuitives, and how she helps them manage anxiety, negative thinking, and self-sabotage patterns. Learn about how she uses the phases of the moon as a support system for highly sensitive people in her Moon Mapping Year program, and the emotional and creative benefits. Listen until the end to hear how you can learn more about Dana's work. As always, we must disclaim that the information we share in the podcast is for educational purposes only. As MAP Method practitioners, we do not diagnose or treat disease, and we recommend working with a qualified practitioner. Now, let's talk with Dana. Welcome, Dana. I am so excited to be able to feature you and your work with the MAP Method. Maybe we can get started by having you talk a little bit about your background, kinds of things you were doing before you found the MAP Method, and how you came to this work. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So where I started was I was trained as an English and art teacher. And then for a long time, my work ended up being intuitive related, just because of some events that happened in my life where I started receiving messages from the angels. And at the time, it was such a life shift. I was never in the New Age industry. I was not familiar with it. It was not something that I was, had any prior knowledge to. And so when it started happening, my world kind of took a complete turn, and I started just, and I did that work, and I still do that work. It's still a big part of what I do, but it's integrated now, obviously, with the MAP. And at the time, what it was just helping people to connect with their spirit guides, angels, helping them to use their creativity and their intuition, and helping them to trust their own path and the information and the knowledge and wisdom that they inherently have became a big part of it. Because as I was communicating with the angels, obviously I was doing a lot of healing work with them. I work a lot with my guardian angel, Cassandra, and I've written journals and journals and journals, years and years of conversations with her, which ended up being my training, is how I see it. So she ended up being my mentor without me realizing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how that transition happened and how you were guided maybe to find the MAP method?
Yeah, it was definitely guided, because I used to lead these women's circles called Moon Sister Circles. Did a lot of work with the moon and reconnecting with those natural cycles. And in one of the circles, one of the women had come to me for a reading, and she was asking about this training that she wanted to take, which was the MAP training. And my angel said, if you take that training, you'll never have to take any other training. That'll be it. And then after the session, my angel told me that I have to sign up and join. And I'm like, what? I have never taken a class in 20 years. Like my learning all came kind of from my intuition and the spiritual realm. So it was really not, I had taken little courses here and there for fun and stuff, but no training per se, no certified training. So I was really shocked by the message, and I always argue a little bit at first sometimes because, I'm a little bit stubborn, but eventually I listened, and I'm so glad I did. And I'm so understand now looking back, I so see why I had to take that training and why it was so important.
Yeah. So can you help us understand like what you felt the significance was? I mean, you already had a very strong connection to intuition.
Hmm. Yeah.
You it sounds like you'd already found your life's work.
Yes.
What did MAP add to that, and how do you use it in your work?
So I think what's really interesting and fascinating about it is it added this dimension of one being able to access the subconscious mind to actually ask it to do the work, which obviously that is what MAP is. Whereas before I was always, when you're using your intuition, you're accessing that realm anyways. In my opinion, it's part of how you're connecting with the collective consciousness as well as your own subconscious mind. So I was always diving in those realms anyway, but this was different because it was using that knowledge and using that the access to the subconscious mind to actually do the work that you're wanting it to do, which I'm sure and anyone who's experienced MAP is really can see that it takes care a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And so it was really powerful that way, just another um, access to something where I felt really supported and just saving time, because that's how I feel it is when you're working with spirit too, is you're saving lots of time. There's just knowledge there that we don't always have access to, which they can really bring in. And it's the same with the subconscious mind. There's so much knowledge and wisdom and support and help that we just don't always access because we're used to needing it to come from our conscious mind, right?
Our intellect.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So can you flesh that out a little bit? I'd love to hear how you used to do your work, with just intuitive guidance versus how it happens now that you
Hmm.
have MAP as a tool.
For sure.
Yeah.
So so still in my work, there's like two offerings. I still do the intuitive readings where we will just go and we'll just I'll connect and they'll have questions and I'll hear what I'm hearing and I'll share what I'm hearing. So I still do that, but what's different is I also have the intuitive therapy sessions. And I used to I used to have the intuitive therapy sessions before where it would be more, we're going to do the emotional work, we're going to do some of the deeper kind of subconscious work. But now I have the MAP in addition to working with spirit in that realm. And so what happens is, the client comes in, they're coming in with a concern or what it is they want to work on. And so I'll connect with spirit and kind of get some guidance on how to start. And then we'll go into mapping it. So we'll use the commands. Um, and then I'll listen. Obviously, when you're working with MAP, you're constantly listening to the subconscious mind and where it wants to direct you and which commands it wants to do. So you're already following that kind of intuitive process anyways. But then sometimes I'll have some interjections from spirit and be like, oh, also do this or don't forget this. And so I'll get some instructions, which I never had gotten in the past because obviously I didn't know MAP before. So that part's been fun and funny. Oftentimes it's interesting, right? What they pull up. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it kind of weaved itself into what I was already doing is what ended up happening.
And so what kinds of clients do you see? Like what does your practice specialize in or focus on?
I'll work a lot with highly sensitive people and empaths. I myself am a really highly sensitive person, and I had some reactions to MAP in the beginning that, even when I had talked to the creators of it, they hadn't experienced that before. And so there's it's just a familiarity with the sensitivity that can come when you are really when your nervous system is really highly sensitive, or you had, you're really highly sensitive plus trauma. And that's my background, is being highly sensitive plus having trauma background. So it's nice to have something that can go at that gentle pace if you need it to. Right. And so that's always kind of been my client base, just because that's where I've been also, and the things that I've struggled with too. So, and I do a lot of, inner child healing and mother wound healing, because I work a lot with Divine Mother. And so there's a lot of, accessing your inner mother and healing that relationship, and all of the stuff that can come from having a difficult childhood relationship with your mother. So, and obviously with that, because in my work, we really use the moon and the cycles as a support system for highly sensitive people, because that's one thing that for me was a big part of my healing that happened right before MAP, was just really integrating myself back with those natural rhythms, ended up being so supportive to my nervous system. And so I integrate that with the MAP work that I do, and it really helps to support my clients also with their nervous systems.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit? You mentioned that some of your early experiences with MAP were maybe different from other people's experiences because of your unique, very sensitive nervous system. Can you just talk about what that looked like for you and how you learned to manage it, or it maybe resolve it? Yeah.
Yeah, so well, MAP resolved it. I mean, that was part of it, right? It's part of why it's so great. But when I was going through it, and at the beginning, just having a lot of reactions to the commands, because how it was moving through me was activating some stuff, which sometimes happens when you're doing the neural retraining. It can, as it's working itself through, it can activate some things, right? So then obviously when you're really highly sensitive, then it's making it just uncomfortable, um, it's, to me, like any healing that you do, you're going to hit some spots where you're going to have to confront some of the uncomfortable experiences that you haven't dealt with in the past, and how that has affected your nervous system. So for me, I just had some body reactions, some physical reactions, and then obviously trauma getting triggered. And so then I worked backwards with MAP and was able to reduce the trauma and the trauma response so that it wasn't intense. And now it's not an issue at all. And I've only ever had, probably even in my highly sensitive kind of groupings, I've only had a handful of people who have similar reactions in the beginning with MAP that I've had. The rest, nobody ever has kind of reactions to it. It all goes very smoothly. But sometimes, it shows up that like, whoa, that was like super intense, and it does all of these intense kind of things. And so just knowing that that's a possibility, and you can be confronted with that, is really helpful, right? Because I freaked out when it happened to me. I was like, what's going on? I don't know. I don't feel, what's happening. But then I realized what was happening and was okay. So that part, I feel like, is a helpful for, highly sensitive people when they're doing any work, to just remember that you can have reactions that maybe you're not familiar with, and that's okay. They'll just pass. It'll go. It's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you say you worked backwards with MAP, do you mean backwards in time, or what do you mean by that?
No, what I mean is, so when it was an intense experience to begin with. And that's kind of what I mean. Not everybody has like most, I'd say, like even with my clients, 98% of them or 95% of them don't have intense experiences. But some have intense experiences like I did in the beginning, and was really intense. And then, what I did was just by doing more MAP sessions and moving through it more, realizing that it was the trauma that was really getting worked through, and the anxiety. And from that, then I just kept working on the trauma, and I kept working on the anxiety with MAP, and then it resolved those reactions. So,
Okay. So how do you feel like the MAP method has helped you personally?
oh my goodness, it's been life-changing, literally. I know it's so cliche, but it's so absolutely true. I just recently have mast cell activation syndrome, so an autoimmune kind of disorder, or whatever you want to call it. And with that, I can have a lot of multitude different reactions just because it's a, whole system response. So you can have different things happening. But recently, I've been really using MAP to diminish the physical manifestations of those reactions. So one of them, for instance, I'm allergic to temperature changing. So when it gets hot, my mast cells will dump all these chemicals in my heart, and my heart just doesn't work properly. It doesn't. And then I become really low energy because I'm not getting enough oxygen. And it's a really tough experience, because obviously it's really uncomfortable when your heart's not working properly, and can be even a little scary, right? But I've been using MAP, and it's been shocking to me. And along with all of that, when the heart's not functioning properly, there's also like bloating and inflammation that happens also. And I've been so shocked how listening to my MAP recordings, because I create recordings based on the moon, and I've been using them for my MCAS, and it's been phenomenal. Like it brought it down like this to nothing. And so I was able to tolerate the heat, because all the symptoms went away. So that part has been fascinating to me, because in the beginning, I was mostly using MAP for emotional issues like trauma, which obviously when you're working on your trauma and you have an autoimmune disease, it's gonna help. And it did help my reactions anyway. So it was affecting my physical being anyway. I just never directly went to MAP with the physical symptoms. And now that's what I'm doing. And it's working so great, like phenomenally great. So I'm really impressed by that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I actually came to MAP in a different direction. So I that's exactly what I do, is working with chronic health conditions, including
Mhm.
allergies and sensitivities. That's how I got started. That's how I even found.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a while to get there. And
I
now I'm there.
know.
Mhm.
Right, right. So I'm intrigued because you say that you like to work, and a large part of your client base is highly sensitive people and empaths. And I have to say, I didn't know a lot about that when I got into the MAP method, but since I've been practicing this method, and I started reading, and listening to all this information about HSPs, highly sensitive people, and empaths, physical empaths and emotional empaths, I started to realize, wait a minute, like I think most of my clients are in that category. And also most of my clients have many of
Yeah.
my clients, yeah, I would say the majority have trauma histories,
Yes.
significant trauma histories. And so, kind of all of this is kind of coming together for me. So, can you talk a little bit about how the MAP method might be, I don't know, an appropriate method, or maybe even more impactful for people who are highly sensitive or are bona fide empaths? Maybe we
Mhm.
can just say what that means, because I don't know that everyone listening even knows what that means.
Well, I know highly sensitive when I was reading about it, has to do with the nervous system and just that it absorbs a lot more information. So it absorbs a lot more. To me, what that means is it's like it's absorbing a lot more emotional information and it's absorbing a lot more energetic information. So although you can be in a room with all these people, like only some of them will be taking in all this information that's not being spoken or said, but it's in the room and they feel it. And it's not only do they feel it, but they're absorbing it, which means it's affecting their nervous system, because when you're absorbing that information, your nervous system has to handle it. You have to digest it all. You have to, so, and empaths, it to me, I don't know like what the actual definition in terms of what the difference is, but to me, an empath is also being able to communicate and receive information on those levels also. So for instance, you're just receiving more information. When you said environment, it's like my clients who experience a lot of grief when a tree falls down, like because they can feel it. And other people who can't feel it think that's ridiculous because they just don't experience that same thing. So if you didn't experience, I could see how it would seem ridiculous, except for that when you feel it, it's not. And so to me, they are such a gift to the world. And I wish that, corporations and so many big decision makers would actually access information from highly sensitive people and receive insight from the environment before they made decisions, because the information that they receive, I think, is really impactful and helpful and wise, and would help us run our world a lot better. But it's so far not the case.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I started learning about highly sensitive people. I can't remember whose work it is. The person who coined the term highly sensitive
Yes.
people. I heard, I think there's a TED talk that she did, and she also has written a couple of books. And I thought, oh yeah, that's me. Highly sensitive, like just as you said, as you described, just more impacted, more more highly sensing or influenced by information,
Yes.
emotional information, or other kinds of information in the environment that other people don't seem to
Mhm.
may not be aware of.
Yeah.
But so I thought, oh, that's me. But then I started reading Judith Orloff's work. She's an MD. She's a physician that specializes in taking care of medical needs of empaths. She
Mhm.
herself is an emotional and a physical empath,
Mhm.
and she wrote a book called Essential Tools for Empaths, which I found
Mhm.
fascinating.
Lovely.
Where she talks about, so she has some self-assessments in there for figuring out if you're an empath or not. Are you an emotional empath? Are you a physical empath? So an emotional empath is someone who really is impacted by emotional information,
Mhm.
um, and is extremely sensitive to being in large groups, right? Needs a lot of time to recover from being around difficult people.
Yeah.
Um, like, they can't separate themselves from what they witness in the world, whether it's TV news, movies,
Yes.
media,
Yeah.
right? So they almost need like a low media diet. Anyway, she has all these characteristics, and you kind of take this. But one of the characteristics she mentioned, which was so interesting because, then I learned about your work, was, are you sensitive to phases of the moon? The phases
Mhm.
of the moon. And I
Yeah.
thought, the phases of the moon? I don't even pay attention to
Mm.
the phases of the moon. But, that is one of those things that is more heightened for someone who is an empath. So an emotional
Yeah.
empath feels emotional information, right? Can pick up emotions from others, but not only. So the difference is that the highly sensitive person receives the information, but the empath actually feels it in their body, like they take it in, it becomes them.
Mhm.
So that person's sorrow becomes your sorrow. You
Mhm.
take it on.
Yeah.
Um, and the physical empath is actually able. actually takes on physical symptoms from
Yes.
people
Yeah.
around them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was something I had never considered before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, really interesting book. But tell me more about how the MAP method. Why do you specialize with this group with the MAP method, and sort of what are the interesting associations or correlations there? I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about that?
Well, I think when you had mentioned, with the moon and the moon cycles, it's interesting because the work that I do right now is every week I create a map recording based on the cycles of the moon and the natural cycles. So, because when we're working with the seasons and the natural rhythms, and then you're tying that in with what's going on with the moon, to me, it's like you're already kind of tuned in, especially if you're highly sensitive, you're already tuned into these rhythms. So why not use them to the best of your advantage? And so that's what I'm continuously trying to do, is helping my people that, follow the moon mapping year is to really access those energies so that they're carried a little bit more than having to do all of that work on their own. Like, for instance, in October, um, spiritually speaking, that's a time of the year where the veil is just a little bit thinner between our world and the world of spirit. And it is ancestral, like, for so long, it's been an ancient practice through many different cultures at that time to connect with ancestors, and to pay homage to ancestors, and also just to communicate. And so I create map recordings at that time to clear ancestral memories from the body, because there's already this movement there. There's already this, whether we're aware of it or not, it's been in the collective unconscious for a long time. So it's nice to be able to pull from that and to use it. And just like in the spring, there's so much renewal, there's so much rebirth, there's so much happening around shedding old layers and stepping into something new. So I do a lot of planting new intentions and using map to clear what's out of the what's in the way, or what's not in agreement with our goals. Because of the lot of work that I'm doing, is magic based, meaning you're planting new moon intentions and you're watching them grow. So you're planting seeds of dreams and goals, and then you're working with MAP to release what might not be in agreement with those goals. And the reason why I work with HSPs and empaths on that is because it's unfortunate, but because of the sensitivity and because of the extra information that they're always absorbing and carrying, it just feels like there's a little bit extra challenge there of meeting goals and making dreams happen. So let's say they have a business goal and they want to reach something, but they've just had to contend with so much. And when you have to contend with so much, it's hard to bust out. And that was my personal experience with my own dreams and my own goals. And that's how MAP was so helpful, is it just dumped a whole bunch of shit I was carrying. And what I look at it now, especially with the moon cycles, because at the new moon, it's like the symbolism is you're planting new seeds, but at the full moon is when you're releasing. So if you think of it like the breath, like an inhale is the new moon, but the exhale is the full moon. So at the full moon, you're using MAP to get rid of as much as you can that you held on to during the whole month that you didn't even realize you were holding on to. And that's the part that I think, is so helpful for HSPs and empaths to realize, is you are holding on to and absorbing so much more than you're even conscious of. So it is so helpful once you get in a rhythm of regular emotional and energetic release, like whatever that looks like for you. I happen to teach it to do with the moon cycles because I find it really easy and supportive when we're following that kind of natural cycle. But whatever it is that you're doing, just make it a regular practice to dump shit because you're picking up a lot of stuff, right? So Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so can you tell us more about what your programs are, or like you kind of mentioned it here briefly, the moon mapping year, but tell us more about the programs that you offer for your clients.
That one is the one that there's just a couple, like I have the moon mapping year,
Mhm.
which is, where you're receiving a recording every week. And we're using those cycles to do the inner work and do the release and do, so there's some that work on the body when it's the right time in the year. And there's some that work on the ancestral memories. There's some that work on, just the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system, and there's some that work on connecting with your spirit guides and your angels. So I go, the gamut between the neural reprogramming for going from the emotional realms to the physical to the creative and the intuitive. And that one is just strictly the recordings, and sometimes using myth and spirit to guide those also. And then the other thing that I do is art journaling with the moon. And with those, what I'm teaching is just how, again, to use those moon cycles to tap into the creativity and to release things emotionally, but also to create. And I don't just mean like create artistically, I mean create the experiences that we want in our lives, but allowing the art journey to carry us through on that. So that one I use MAP, but only in the classes that I run.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
So the art journaling one is like a group sessions online?
It's a class, yeah. Yeah, they're group. It's a group experience, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you do that online or do you do that in person?
Yeah, I do actually most of my work online because I work a lot with people from all over the world. So online is the best way to get us together. Um, and I have a Facebook group that's Art Journaling with the Moon,
Mm.
and so that's just a free group that people can join and just start playing. Right, because I offer art prompts every time the moon changes phase, which is about like every 3 or 4 days, just so that you can get into the rhythm of, the moon cycles and as they're changing. I just give a new prompt to use with your art journal every moon phase, and then we share our pages together, what people have done. So it's fun to see what other people have created also around those themes.
Mm. Can you talk about, why clients come to see you? What is it that they want to work on? Like, what are some of the uh, typical kinds of situations, and what kinds of results have you seen, witnessed,
Hmm.
in your client
Yeah.
using your various skills?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's interesting because, you know, when it comes to doing the type of work that I've done, I really see, you know, um, a wide array of issues or problems. Um, because I think every empath and highly sensitive person experiences the challenges of that in unique and different ways. Plus, even when the trauma comes in, or the relationship with mother and how that affects mother-daughter relationships, it's just interesting that s- so many different issues appear, but we can approach them and support them in the same way. So my work actually isn't really centered on a certain, people don't come to see me because they have a certain ailment. That's never been my um my way. They come to see me because they know I'm connecting to the realm of spirit, and they want to um experience the perspective that brings, or they're just interested in knowing what that side of things has to say about what they're being challenged with. And so I help couples, I help mothers, I help entrepreneurs, I help therapists, I have every every type of career client, I'm sure, on my roster through the years, which actually I really love, right? That I get to see such a wide array of people and what they're doing and how it's affecting, like how their own sensitivities are affecting them, right? So they're just basically it's just the sensitivities, I would say, that like kind of groups us all together, and that we don't have a lot of support, nor have we been given the skills or the tools of how to deal with that sensitivity. And so that's why they're coming.
Do you have a few stories you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. I know one of my favorite stories is with the moon mapping year. I had a client who was, it was actually with the ancestral ones that I was talking about in October. And she was telling me about how she was listening to it. And she's like, I did a series of 3. So one was with the lower body, one was the ancestral memories in the hips and the pelvis, and then the other one was with the upper body. And so she was doing the lower body one, and she had a lot of pain in her knee for a long time that she thought was arthritis. And then she was listening to the mapping session and the pain went away. And she had all this experience when she was doing the mapping session, like her leg kept moving and she was like, I couldn't stop it. And it was just shaking and moving. And I laugh because so often, I don't know if you've noticed this with clients, but it definitely happens in my world, is there's just a lot of trippy experiences that happen with MAP, like things that you don't plan, that you can't plan, that you have no idea. It kind of feels like, what's going on? I don't know. And of course, it's what it's like when you're working with spirit and the subconscious realm. Of course, it would be like that also, right? Like things are going to happen. Like sensations are going to pop up and you're gonna be like, whoa, wow, how did that happen? Or what happened? So that was happening to her leg. And then the pain went away and it never came back. She was like, I thought I had arthritis there, but apparently I think it was just ancestral memories. So that was a fun one. And then there's, of course, the phobias. Oh, I have another funny one actually, because I actually identify as witch. And there was this woman who came to see me, and we used MAP, but it was so effective that she was really scared and wouldn't see me again because she didn't understand how it works so effectively. And the fact that I called myself witch really scared her. So when you added those two things together, she was like, oh, what kind of weird magic is this? And I'm like, it's just neural retraining, but so that was fun. And yeah, just a lot of bringing down anxiety and the trauma responses, right? So that they're more manageable. Like I used to live with a degree of anxiety that was an 8 or 9, and I'm like at a 1 or 2 now all the time. And mine used to be chronic, like it was just every day chronically at a high intense level. And many of my clients had those experiences too, where it just was really, the anxiety was just brought down. I think it's one of the best things about MAP is how effective it is at reducing stress and anxiety and the physical responses of those conditions. So,
I agree.
oh yeah, it's life-changing for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love those stories. So you have people coming to you because they've heard about your work. They are looking for, maybe they've recognized that they are highly sensitive or they're an empath.
Mhm.
They're looking for that insight that you can provide to them through your own guidance, spiritual guidance, as well as the opportunity to maybe resolve things, not just understand them better, but actually have some resolution, right, through the MAP method.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I think, great about MAP, right? It really brings it, like, makes it takes the work you're doing and then pumps it up to 100 times. It's so great.
So I'm curious because you have this like additional dimension to you. I'm a little jealous, right? Because you have this spiritual guidance, right? I don't have an inner Cassandra. I do kind of feel like sometimes like there are people who are drawn to the MAP method because they already have these
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know what we call them, like clairvoyance
Yes.
or clair other things.
Yeah.
And I felt and so they have a connection to intuition and the spiritual world that I definitely don't have. I feel like I'm clear nothing. And
Hmm.
I came to the method because I thought I wanted a neural retraining method to help my clients with sensitivities and allergies retrain
Yes.
their brain so
Yeah.
that they could tolerate all these things that they become
Yes.
sensitive to, right? And I
Yeah.
had people coming to me who were eating 6 things,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, couldn't go for a walk,
Yeah.
couldn't leave their home. I mean, just like really, excessive
Yes.
kinds of um, reactions to external things, stimuli. And I had to develop that, like the basic ways that they teach us to kind of connect with your intuition so you can make decisions,
Yes. Yeah.
with the MAP method, because we have like billions of different instructions that we can use, and like what is
Yes.
appropriate for this person, what order does it need to be in, and all that.
Yeah.
So like figuring that out, I mean, that took me a long time to really get, but
Mhm.
you had this on board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you talk about your experience of doing MAP sessions as someone that has this sort of other knowing?
Well, one, I think we all kind of have that knowing, and I bet you as you're experiencing, you're noticing that it was there. You're just like practicing it more, right? Like kind of tuning into it and getting familiar with it. Um, and so for me, it was just I guess maybe I'm a little confused by the question. Um, all I know is I can hear both sides, so I just listen to both sides, and even though I argue often with my angel Cassandra, which by the way, if you want to know, because one, guaranteed everybody has a guardian angel, guaranteed 100%. Always there. I feel like it's a support system we've been given by divine love. It is definitely 100% accessible. But one of the greatest things is just ask, like ask for what you want. So if you want to have a connection with your guardian angel, ask for it and then wait and let it watch what unfolds. And since you have map what's in the way of having that connection with your angel, guardian angel, and see what happens with that, right? Because it's so fun, in my opinion anyway. It's so fun kind of hearing from the realm of spirit and what they have to say and the way they joke with us, but also like massively send this support and this love that is so dependable and constant, like nothing you can access in human relationships, because we're flawed and wounded and have a lot of stuff to work through. So I would definitely encourage you to ask if that's of interest. It's definitely accessible. I think if you desire it, that's a sign, right, that it's in your realm of being able to receive. Yeah. So the way for me, I just ended up using the pendulum because I like pendulum, and that's how I receive my answers. And then now that I've been doing it so long, I can also just often just know, like I just know, okay, go here, go here, go here, go here. Like, so I won't always have to use my pendulum. I can just be listening. And that works too. So
Mm, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was just imagining it was a richer experience for you to work with a client, than it is for someone
No,
like me.
no,
Okay. Yeah.
no. I think it's the same thing, right? Just following the prompts, and that's what's great about it, is just using the commands, right?
Mhm.
So it's just that added dimension of sometimes spirit stepping in and saying, hey, don't forget this, or don't forget to do that, or I'll hear a lot of instructions in order to support the client, like, Dana, slow down. Dana, you have to stop right now and you have to talk to them about this. And so then I'll stop and I'll be like, okay, spirit wants us to talk about this for a moment before we move forward. So that will happen often in sessions. Is just they're interjecting a lot and telling me what to do. So they're bossy.
Mm. So can you tell us a story of how you um, like connected with your intuitive side and started hearing these messages? Yeah.
So it happened when I was pregnant with my son, actually. And of course I have the, history of having had experiences when I was younger and stuff, but the actual like receiving messages part came when I was 25 and I was pregnant with my son, and my mom had started receiving messages about 3 months earlier. And she was like writing them down, and she had received this message for this professor, not this scientist at the U of A. And then she went and delivered that message. And then 3 months later, I received a message for a complete stranger that I knew nothing about, and actually ended up being a woman. It's still so dear to me, this woman, because she was like my first message. And she was had been diagnosed with cancer, and the angels were supporting her through the process of releasing and letting go. And so their messages had to do with some support, asking her to really work on her marriage before she left, and then work on some significant relationships before it was time to go. So it was just deeply impactful, that first experience. And then the first experiences also were really impactful because they were strangers, and I wasn't doing this professionally, like it had just happened. And so the angels would like give me a description and give me a first and last name, and then they'd say, tell them this. And then I'd write down what they were telling me to tell them. And then I'd have to take those old school, because they didn't have Google back then, but like they'd take these old school phone books and look for the person. And then I'd call them and I'd be like, okay, so I know this is going to be really weird, and at the time it was so nerve wracking because I so thought, I don't know why, but I really thought they were going to get angry at me and hurt me. Like I was so afraid of the response, right? But I really felt called to do it anyway. It felt so important. It felt like I was just so pulled to do that. And then I think, the reason for my personal journey, why it happened was that way, was I think I needed a lot of faith building. Both in myself and kind of in the connection, because there was such amazing moments. Like one time there was a man that I had talked to whose father, my angel Cassandra was, and whenever I'm connecting, I'm usually connecting to my angel Cassandra, and then she's telling me who's with her. So I'm not like somebody who's like connecting with people who've crossed over, or that's a medium usually. But I'm always usually just listening to Cassandra, and she's kind of intervening. And so there was this man whose father had passed away, and they had some unresolved stuff when he passed away. And the message, was in regards to that unresolved stuff. And so when he heard it, he was just like, it's just so healing when a stranger calls you and says, like, I just heard this, so can I just share it with you? And, and then it ends up being something that impacts you emotionally, right? And something that had been left unsaid. So in our map, it'd be like unfinished communications.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
they really help with the unfinished communications.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then there was another one who, when I called, and it was just another one too that was just so impactful. And she was like, I had called her in the morning, and she was bawling after I read her the message. And she's like, you don't understand. I almost committed suicide last night. And so what you're saying to me is so needed to hear. And I was like, oh my God, okay, it's worth, the risk of looking stupid or feeling dumb, or, all the things that, or worrying about being hurt because of how someone will react, right? So I realized that it was far worth the risk. And then obviously those experiences were so impactful and life-changing for me that I just completely left teaching and, went into the new age realm. So changed my industry.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was an interesting beginning in my 20s, I'll tell you, but had a lot to learn. I would definitely suggest that people have like physical mentors sometimes when they're doing it too, because it was, there's when you don't know what you're doing, um, it was hard for me to stay grounded, which impacted obviously my nervous system again, right? Because yeah, it's a lot of what I've been healing is what I kind of did a little bit in my 20s in regards to that. So just knowing how to stay grounded and in your body as you're having spiritual experiences is really important.
Mm. So thanks for sharing that story. That's remarkable. For people who've been listening, who are curious about your work, they want to find you, how should they best do that?
Probably just go to my website is the best location. So it's danadaponte.com. And I'll just share with you a little bit of magic. My last name, my married last name, ended up meaning the bridge. And my first name means mother of the gods. So when I put those two together a little while ago in my writing, Cassandra actually asked me to look at that because I was doubting what I was doing. When you have those moments of like your inner critics coming up and you're like, who am I and why am I doing this and what's going on? And she's like, Dana, what does your first name mean? And I'm like, it means this. And then she's like, Dana, what does your second name mean? And I'm like, it means this. And she's like, okay, reverse them and put them together. And it was a bridge to the mother of the gods. And I was like, bawling. I was like, okay, I get it. Because all of that healing work that, comes with connecting with that, divine love, which to me is like divine mother. So that's a little bit of information, but how you spell it is DAPONTE. That's how you spell my last name. So that's where you would find me.
All right, great. Well, thank you for joining me and sharing so much of your experience, your knowledge. It's fascinating.
Well, thank you so much for asking. It's wonderful meeting you.
Thanks for joining us for the Flourish with Functional Nutrition podcast. Please listen again and remember to follow us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or Stitcher. To learn more about the MAP Coaching Institute, visit mapcoachinginstitute.com. To learn more about Mind Remap for Health, visit mindremapforhealth.com. Until the next time, be well and flourish. Content of this podcast, copyright 2021 by Twin Cities Nutritional Therapy. Music by Barbara Ben.